All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and non binaries, interplanetary, intergalactic time travelers, as you see fit to call yourselves. We salute you. This is Oliver, and I'm in a bunker I call Studio 72 in the People's Republic of Oregon, Multnomah County, People's Republic of Portland, however you want to look at it. What I want to hope everything's working right here. I never know. I never know with this new computer if I've got it going. It says I'm live. I'm assuming that the audio it says at the bottom there. But I've had major issues. I'm also going to try a couple things here with the screen share, which shouldn't be a big deal. But I wanted to address just a little bit about specifically because I've got so much on my mind. There's so many things happening in the world. 72 hours before we have a transition of power and inauguration in DC. Record freezing Arctic plunge that you notice none of these climate hysterias are talking about it, right? You won't hear Bernie Sanders talking about the record freezing cold that's going to blanket the country for weeks. No, you won't see any of these ding dongs talk about that because it doesn't fit into that global warming and the climate change. And we're going to hear a little bit of Governor Tina's fighting climate change. Fighting climate change. What the hell does that even mean? How are you going to fight the weather? You mean with geoengineering? Oh, I see. You mean actually shooting stuff out of planes that can create water and dry things up? Oh, okay. I see. So Governor Tina Kotek means fighting climate change. She means through geoengineering. She just doesn't want to say geoengineering. Nobody wants to say geoengineering. But fighting climate change here in Oregon, it's absolutely bizarre. It's mind-numbing, silly is what it is. It's nonsense, in my opinion. You can't control the weather naturally. Now, the Hopi Indians, the Hopi tribe, the Hopis used to do a rain dance. And when they needed rain for the crops, they would do these dances, cut up a couple of snakes, and maybe that's what Governor Tina means. Is she wants to chop up a couple snakes and we could do a group, Oregonian, kind of a Hopi rain dance. That would make sense if that's what she means by fighting climate change. But I wanted to zero right in on her State of the Union, the governor's State of the Union. That's why I put it on the title. That's why I'm going to try to just stay focused and just knock it out and not talk about too much other stuff. But so, I mean, we got the salmon here running in the streams. We've had record salmon returns in California and Oregon. California is very substantial because they've spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to get the eggs. You can see the eggs there. That's what this painting is. Those are reds. So you got coho salmon dropping the reds, and then the male comes and squirts the magic sauce there, and then they fertilize, and hopefully they'll hatch and make their way down on their journey. That's the whole cycle right there. So climate change, we should be calling it salmon restoration. It's not climate change. People are, oh, that's where you're wrong, bro. That's where you're wrong. The water in the rivers is 2 degrees warmer than it's been, and that warmth means that the salmon die or they won't come back or whatever kind of these they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in OSU, Oregon State University tuition to finance to learn about how to bring the salmon back. I'm all for the salmon. Who's against the salmon? You got to really look hard to find some people that have got a vendetta against the salmon or somehow going to fight the salmon restoration projects. If that's what you mean, then say that. Don't come up with this bizarre delusional boogeyman of climate change. Oh, like you somehow are stronger and bigger and greater than God, mighty himself. You are going to defy God's will on God's green earth, right? It sounds nutty, and I think that it really is. But let's listen here to a little bit. Let's see if I can successfully get the screen to share. That's step one. Okay, because that may not happen. And let's see here. Maybe we could just try the whole screen. We'll try the whole screen. Okay, so you got the whole screen. And then let's go here. And there should be, isn't there supposed to be another click? I thought there was supposed to be. Let's try this here and see. I feel like we should cue Elton John, which I love that song, Elton John. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that is exactly what she just said. Oregon is still standing. So, what was there doubt? Did she have some doubt that Oregon would not be standing here? So the one thing I wanted to say there, I'm going to try to share that in a different way. The one thing I want to say is that she's touching on the theme of resilience, which sounds awesome, right? I mean, that resilience, that's an environmental term that they kind of a trigger word, resilience. But it also means psychologically and behaviorally, which I like that she's using that in that sense. I mean, that it's powerful. Resilient people don't give up. Resilience means you're still standing. Resilience is that Elton John song. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what she is saying there. And I like that. I like that part. Whoever wrote that for her, if it wasn't her, which it could have been, but you know what I'm saying, is that resilience is why Oregon is still here. Resilience is why America is still here. Resilience is why and how we survived 4 years of one of the most horrific totalitarian Democrat regimes this country has ever seen. Those are her friends. Tina's friends are the totalitarian Democrats that imploded, nearly got us nuked in World War IV. We're not out yet. We're not out from being nuked in World War IV yet. What these Democrats and what Tina's friends have done to Oregon and the country as a whole. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to see if we could just do this and then do this one. And then if it'll let us go through there, and I got to click it on one more, right? And then let's see here. So we got to do one more.
And we have developed new skills and insights.
I'm hoping you can hear that.
To withstand the uncertainties of tomorrow.
I'm only getting it in one ear here. So I think that was Kate.
It is fertile soil indeed that we now take on the challenges in front of us and ahead of us. Oregon's fortitude was tested again last year as wildfires roared across our landscapes with an intensity that was unprecedented in both size and scope, demanding incredible courage from thousands of firefighters who stood between flames and what Oregonians hold dear. And we made it through. Another recovery is demanded of us and our communities, and we will stay focused on that recovery. But we made it through.
Yeah.
I want to thank from the bottom of my heart all.
Yes, we made it through. We make it through wildfires. Oregon's been here for a real long time. I mean, I don't know. It's like she's trying to associate all of the shared trauma and trying to dovetail that into wildfires is climate change, and we're resilient, but we made it through because we've tossed hundreds of millions of dollars at fighting the fire instead of raking the forest and thinning the forest. So she's trying to spin the mismanagement, the decades and decades of mismanagement that creates the intensity of a wildfire. She's trying to spin that through as like a victim complex. Am I wrong? Do you hear that? It's like a victim complex of where we're resilient, we survive together, we're on the same team. She's trying to create this teamwork type bonding, which is smart in a speech, but it falls flat to me on my ears when I think about the bigger picture of where did the wildfires come from in 2020? They came from her staff. Her staff was down trying to blow up the federal courthouse in 2020, the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse downtown. Her staff was arrested. Many Democrat staffers were arrested in 2020. So she starts out with this resilience. We had wildfire because of climate change. Forget about all the arsonists that were arrested. Forget about my staffer who was arrested downtown. Forget about all the anarcho-comms that were lighting fires that were arrested in California, were arrested in Oregon, arrested in Washington, arrested all through Canada. They got them. There's no mystery. Not one word about arsonists and Democrat arsonists or her staffers and friends that are Democrat arsonists that were trying to blow up the federal courthouse, setting fires to police stations, threatening to kill people on the streets. It did kill some people on the streets of downtown Portland. She left all that part out of resilience. All that great resilience speech skipped all those details. Did you notice that? Or was that just me? Might have just been me.
The firefighters, all the emergency responders, both paid and volunteer, who kept Oregon as safe as possible.
Well, now she's buddies with the firefighters? Now she loves?
And I want to thank the legislators in this room
supremacy
for coming together.
What happened to all that?
Frankly, just a few weeks ago, for the shortest special session ever, to allocate the necessary funds to pay our firefighting bills before the year's end. Thank you. And my friends, let us keep our thoughts and prayers with the people of Los Angeles, who are experiencing horrific devastation of their homes and businesses. We know what this means.
More arsonists.
We are responding with mutual aid. 440 Oregon firefighters and 235 engines have been deployed there because that's what Oregonians do for our neighbors.
Never should have.
Our resilience as a state is grounded.
We never should have deployed those firefighters down to California into an anarchist communist hellhole at this point. It's a beautiful place. Beautiful people, but when you have arsonists that are setting fire and burning toxic chemicals, they let them deal with their own climate change, if you will. If they're so understaffed, because why do we have to send firefighters down to California? Because they've understaffed and driven the firefighters off with vaccine mandates, just as Tina's Democrat friends here in Oregon have eliminated jobs with police and fire by vaccine mandates. See, so this is another crisis that's been created by Democrats. So she feels like some sort of alliance. She wants to kind of like make it seem like she's fighting together because that's good neighbors. That's not what she was saying in 2020. That's not what the Democrats were saying in 2020 or 2024 for that matter. They were talking about locking up those that were not getting their vaccine passports. And then she was talking about laying off first responders. Or actually, with the mandates, it was a threat. So either you have to get these poison experimental jabs. She doesn't mention any of that in the opening of this. She doesn't mention the mandates that Pfizer and Moderna and these big pharmaceuticals that were tightly surrounded around her, even in as she went from transition from state legislator into the governor's mansion. The only reason they're not around her is because her wife drove them out of the mansion. That's a fact. Everybody was going, oh my God, more staffers are dropping. And I was the guy going on social media saying, do you know who these staffers are? This is OHSU. This is John Hopkins tools. These are people that have been mandating poison experimental jabs. Notice nobody talks about experimental jabs anymore here from Tina or any of the Oregon Democrats. Nobody's talking about that. Those mandates are still in place today. Today. You want to work at Multnomah County? You want to work for the city of Portland? You have to roll up your sleeve and get boosters in poison jabs to keep your job. Or you get a medical waiver or something. I don't know. I don't know how exactly there is much flexibility in that. When it first came out, I don't know because I'm not on the inside. That's the reason I say that. I know what the laws are, and I know that they're still mandating them, and I know that nobody's talking about lifting and restricting those mandates. Okay. Restricting the ability of government to force experimental vaccines, mRNA jabs, on our workforce. It's criminal. That needs to be adjusted by law, codified. No government should ever mandate anything on its employees, especially gene therapy and experimental type of jabs as the mRNA. Now, that's my personal opinion. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm simply telling you my perspectives and my opinions about civil liberties and keeping our populace and community healthy. And that means no experimentations with experimental drugs because your overlords who have been financing your campaigns and controlling your policy dictate it and tell you, just like Governor Brown, her BFF, Governor Brown, sat there with her little speeches from her little desk, mandating what was happening, pulling children out of schools. It was devastating to their health, their psyche, their learning abilities. That's what these Democrats did. Republicans weren't mandating that crap. They weren't mandating that your children have to go through that type of situation. The Democrat policies were doing that. And those medical martial laws, what I call medical martial laws, the medical martial laws is what damaged our youth and our students. But here she is going to lecture for 35 minutes about how she's all about the youth. She's funding DHS to get the mothers the mental health crisis they need so they can get their kids back. On and on and on. All of this is about children and protecting children when the exact opposite is the case, in my opinion. Their policies that not just Tina, not just picking on her, but the entire policies of the Democrat apparatus here in Oregon is damaged our youth. It's still damaging. And this little fluffy speech and pitching hundreds of millions and billions of dollars out into it is not helping anything unless we get at the core of what went wrong in 2020. It wasn't just the wildfire smoke. It wasn't just this novel coronavirus that came out of, now she's admitting they came from China. You were called a racist and xenophobic if you even implied and suggested that this novel in 2020 came out of China. Oh no, you're a racist. You're xenophobic. Oh no, this came from the melting permafrost. This came from climate change. They said that. It sounds like a joke now. It makes me laugh even saying it out loud. They said that the corona, this COVID, all of this stuff came from climate change. Yeah. And then maybe it came from bat soup out of a market somewhere. They said that for several months, if not 18 months.
In partnerships. Today, here in the front row, are the leaders representing Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribal nations. Thank you for being here. And thank you for what you do as sovereign governments to help your citizens as well as the broader community of your ancestral lands. We so appreciate that. Also, here today at my invitation are elected leaders from our county governments, as well as leadership from the League of Oregon Cities.
Now I'm going to order you around.
I am humbled and inspired by my partners in local government, public servants who are on the ground every day in their communities, meeting the needs of Oregonians. Thank you. Visiting all of Oregon's counties and all 9 tribal nations in my first 2 years has been work and partnership.
Skip ahead here. We got a commercial incoming. Apologize for that.
Side with me to start addressing our crisis of homelessness and our housing supply deficit at the scale that is required to make a difference. From substantial new investment to new coordinated systems at the community level to a gritty can-do attitude.
Gritty.
We have blunted the humanitarian crisis on our doorsteps.
Blunted humanitarian crisis.
The actions related to the homelessness state of emergency initiated 2 years ago are projected to rehouse 3,300 households and prevent 24,000 households from experiencing homelessness in the first place. Our state shelter program now supports over 4,800 shelter beds to help people stay off the streets and have access to transitional stability. And we know housing supply is the long-term solution.
Okay, so that was a total manipulation. Okay, shelter beds are not housing. Okay, 4,800. That's okay. You want me to applaud? You've got shelter beds. I've worked in shelters. I worked in shelters for years. I know it. I know I've said that many times, but I know what shelters are all about. Shelter beds are not housing. And that is, she's saying, we've got shelter beds, we're keeping them off the streets. No, every shelter in the state of Oregon has to boot. It's overnight emergency shelter. They're cots, there's no privacy, it's filthy. And they're all booted out into the cold or into the heat wave, whatever the elements. Every single morning, everyone is booted out with all of their stuff, belongings, whatever it is, bags of garbage, bags of whatever it is, everything that they've got, they're forced with being evicted out of the shelter every single morning. That's not housing. That also, it is why everyone sees all these people that have no place to go with all of these big piles of stuff all over the sidewalks because they have no place to go. They don't have a housing voucher. They don't have a 200 square foot little unit, studio apartment with just the basic essentials that Metro has been building and some of their other NGO partners. There is good work there. I'm actually impressed with some of Metro, what they're doing. But, big but, Metro is 10% of what Metro builds is affordable housing, and what Governor Tina Kotek is calling affordable housing is not affordable for the people that need it the most. It's not low-income housing. 10% of all those units, 200 units, 100 units here, 200 units there, it helps. It helps. But that rent is still $1,500 to $1,800 to $2,000 a month. That's what they call affordable. it's insulting. It really is insulting. And then they don't want to talk about that. They just keep using the word over and over and over, like resilience and like fighting climate change and all these other jargon little trigger words. They just continue to do that over and over and over again without solving anything. Shelter beds do not solve houselessness because they're not housing. It's like I've been repeating this over and over for years. It's falling on deaf ears because it's not changing any of the trajectory. The numbers, we've got 8,000 now living in blue tarp tents around the city. 8,000. Last year it was 6. The year before that it was 4,000. We're going the opposite direction. So she claims she's building on progress when there's no progress of any kind, and there isn't any deep analysis in what the failure is. See, this is the crisis. This is the humanitarian crisis. She's not talking about that today, and none of them will talk about this in public. If they're having the conversations in private, clearly it's private.
Together, by July, the state will have financed 2,800 affordable housing units and provided infrastructure for over 25,000 affordable and market rate housing units.
Affordable.
The Housing Accountability and Production Office is now up and running to reduce barriers to production, and there are new tools for local jurisdictions to get more housing into production faster.
Good.
It's a strong start.
That is good.
But only a starting point.
It's not a strong start.
According to the most recent federal point-in-time count data, homelessness has continued to increase across the nation.
Neutral.
Recent federal data show that on average, the United States saw an 18% increase in homelessness between 2023 and 2024. Oregon came in below the national average increase at 13%.
Our homeless population.
Our prevention efforts are making a difference. But I extended the homelessness state of emergency again last week because we still need an all hands on deck urgency and administrative flexibility to meet the moment.
Okay. Uh-oh. Hang on. Apologize. We're getting hit with KATTU's don't sponsors here.
So I was in Astoria this past November. When I took office, Clatsop County had the highest unsheltered homelessness rate per capita in the state and virtually no capacity to meet the need. Now the county has 80 24/7 shelter beds, tighter coordination between its housing service providers, behavioral health providers, and law enforcement, and they are on track to produce 83 units of new affordable housing. That is
83 units. It's affordable housing, which means it's not helping any of the people that are homeless. None. Without a housing voucher, none. People that have zero income or low income can't afford affordable housing. But the main manipulation here, she's talking about this story about the father with the daughters, which I love that. I mean, me being a single dad raising my daughter, I can relate to that, and I appreciate that. It shows that she's not completely still in the man-hating type of mode when she's talking about a single father in Clatsop County who just wants to get out of this motel, which even the motels, it's a step of privacy of the shelters. I mean, just think about being in a shelter with all these other creepy Fs, and you got a child or children or young daughters, teen daughters. Just think about that for a second. So those families should go into a motel, and she talks about that. But it's a manipulation of the data because Clatsop County, she says they have the highest numbers. She's dealing with 80 beds. She's dealing with 80 homeless people in Clatsop County Astoria, the beach. Now, granted, that they need help too. Rural communities need help too. We've got 7,000. That's 7,000 people houseless here in Multnomah County. Multnomah County. And the numbers are jumping by the thousands every year. She leaves all that data out. She wants to zero in and have this some sort of quasi-success story because she's talking about Clatsop County and they built 80 shelter beds and they converted some, funky, mildew motel, some Columbia Inn, which is, God, I haven't seen it. It's probably not pretty. But she's going to lay this on as a success. This is the progress that she wants to build on, that she's taking credit for, is this manipulation of data. We're failing horribly in the largest population here in Multnomah County, largest populace, failing horribly. And we have all kinds of families that are in crisis dire straits. Some of them are in motels. In the motels, we could have put them in a very comfortable, nice home for what these motels are charging at $200, $300 a night. Thousands and thousands of dollars per motel room each month. Fact. A housing voucher is $1,000. A housing voucher is $1,200, $1,500. Okay? And then that is affordable housing. If you can take that housing voucher and get those families into those units at that price and cover the rent, that's success. That is how we do it. That is how it's done. If you want to solve the crisis of houselessness, that means all these shelter NGOs, all this shelter industrial complex, all of this money, hundreds of millions of dollars in Multnomah County going into shelters where everyone's booted out into the street to go smoke, chase the dragon, smoke the fentanyl, do their yoga stretches, right? And do whatever crazy shit they got to do because they got no other place to go except for Multnomah County Library. And you go down to Multnomah County Library, it's not safe anymore because that's the only place they can use the restroom, pick up their medications. They're at the little pharmacy next to the library, which is not a pharmacy at all. Lots of drugs, not a pharmacy at all. Multnomah County Library. That's an epic failure all in itself. When the children you don't see children at the library anymore. We go down there and it's dangerous. There's no children at Multnomah County Library because it's now a pharmacy and a methadone clinic and very, very unsafe. Okay? So let's just continue on with her.
Is incredible progress and a testament to what our local leaders are accomplishing. So thank you.
For Clatsop County, 80 shelter beds with 7,000 homeless in Portland.
But I will not be
That's
satisfied
success to Tina.
until the job is done.
Plotting. 80 shelter
When I was in Clatsop County, I met with a single parent,
beds.
a devoted father of 2 school-age children,
Here we go.
who was living in the Columbia Inn, which is the motel turned shelter in Astoria.
Here we go.
He is so thankful to have a roof over his head. You see, he was evicted without cause. His lease wasn't renewed, and even though he'd been paying his rent, he lost his home. Facing the possibility of living outside with his kids, he fortunately was referred and had access to the Columbia Inn, and he is grateful. But that is not what he wants.
There we go. Thank you.
He wants an affordable home of his own
Thank you.
for his family.
Thank you.
He can work. He can make it happen. He just needs a place to go. But that's is so very hard to find in his community and almost every community throughout our state. I would bet that every person in this chamber knows where they will sleep tonight, safely and comfortably. That is what I want for every Oregonian. I am impatient about the pace of progress, and some days just pretty angry that we're in this predicament at all and that we can't move faster to get more housing built. So please, my friends, let's do more. Let's be bolder. Let's build more housing.
Let's build low income.
To our local leaders, thank you for strategizing how to bring more land to the table and additional resources for planning and development. Like the conversation happening in the metro area, resources must both support homeless services and facilitate more production of affordable housing.
Low income housing.
In the weeks ahead, you'll hear more about my priorities in the legislative session to serve our unsheltered neighbors statewide and make even more progress on housing production. I implore you to take my budget recommendations and policy proposals seriously. Keep our collective foot on the pedal of progress and not deviate from the path to success that we have built together. Now to Oregon's mental health and addiction treatment system. We have to push harder to get Oregonians the treatment they need and deserve. I think we all know there's simply too much pain on our streets,
too much pain
in our homes, and in our schools.
Too much pain in our schools, too much pain in our...
When it comes to the connection to homelessness, it's important to recognize that not everyone who is experiencing homelessness is dealing with a mental health or addiction challenge, but many are. Someone's ability to get and maintain treatment directly impacts their ability to get and maintain housing. And let's remember that the trauma of extended homelessness is devastating to a person's health and well-being.
Yes.
Although there's much yet to do, we have made some progress. Last year, after the finalization of a study I commissioned to understand regional treatment gaps, I identified a target of adding 465 new treatment beds by the end of 2026. There's now a public online dashboard so we can track our progress with the investments already in the pipeline. To strengthen the workforce needed to help more people, I have focused on eliminating the backlog at Oregon's health licensing boards so qualified counselors and social workers can get to work. My agencies have implemented the vision lawmakers put forward to fix Measure 110 with precision and intention, helping communities set up evidence-based deflection programs across the state. And I continue to support the Oregon State Police's efforts to get illicit drugs off our streets and hold drug dealers accountable. But there has to be more done to meet people's needs.
Yes.
My recommended budget for the next 2 years continues to deploy a dual strategy of increasing treatment capacity and strengthening the available workforce, with $90 million for another 363 treatment beds and $50 million to bolster the provider pipeline and stabilize worker retention.
That's good.
And it's not just about money.
Oh, but it is.
Complex problems rarely are just about the money.
It's all about the money, Tina.
I want Oregon to do more intentionally and strategically to help individuals living with serious mental illness.
I like that.
Why is it okay that we watch very ill people harm themselves because we are unwilling or unable to get them the health care they so desperately need?
It's not okay. Good question, Tina.
There is significant interest in improving access to the Oregon State Hospital for individuals who are accused of crimes, most often misdemeanors. But people who are unable to get the help, they are there to get treatment because they need to be able to defend themselves in court. Today, unlike in the past, the vast majority of Oregon State Hospital patients are now there for treatment so they can go back to court to aid and assist in their own defense. It's nearly impossible to get long-term psychiatric hospital-level care through civil commitment or voluntary commitment because of the needs of the judicial system filling up Oregon State Hospital beds. We have to change this. Nearly 3 out of every 4 individuals at the Oregon State Hospital for aid and assist treatment were either homeless or in shelter at the time of their arrest. And 6 out of 10 aid and assist patients are diagnosed with schizophrenia or another psychotic disorder.
60%.
I believe we can do a better job of coordinating shelter services with access to mental health care. And by doing so, help people stabilize before they decompensate and a crime is committed. By doing so, we will keep our communities safer, reduce the logjam at the Oregon State Hospital, and most importantly, meet the needs of our neighbors more humanely.
Yes.
Our systems of care need so much work.
Yes.
We didn't get here overnight, and it is complex. In my visits around the state and through many conversations with people doing the work, it's clear there are things that are making a difference. We just need more of them in more places.
What's making a difference?
I know the Herculean efforts that community providers are making to meet the healthcare needs of Oregonians with serious mental illness.
Not yet.
So for those who are listening,
good ideas,
thank you.
But it hasn't made a difference yet, Tina.
Please keep going in your work.
Keep going where? Downhill?
So how about we renew our efforts on what can be and should be? My recommended budget to improve access to mental health care is a floor. Let's try to raise the ceiling as you go through the budget process.
Okay.
I believe we need to humanely improve criteria for civil commitment.
Yes.
Make sure community options exist to serve a larger civil commitment population, and dedicate permanent supportive housing with enhanced on-site services so more people have long-term living options that can support their health status. I have directed my team to develop a new model of permanent supportive housing, what we're calling intensive permanent supportive housing, or PSH double plus plus.
PSH double plus plus, double plus triple LGB GH LS plus plus double. It's good. It's really good. The supportive housing, I joke there, but she's got the right idea. This is actually some brilliant psychologists have actually been consulting her, because this is true. And this is exactly what is going on. And what she's not saying, and maybe it's not the right speech, but the analysis is that the Democrats have unloaded, Governor Brown started it 2020, unloaded the prisons out into the streets and unloaded the state hospital patients out into the streets. Now, what she's saying is facts, but she's not saying all of it, because she's not saying what I just said. But that is at the core of it. She's got it right. I'm not saying she's wrong, because it's right. We don't have the legal public defenders. We don't have the counsel. If they don't have the counsel, they cannot be kept in state care, state custody. I don't know if do they call it custody? But what she just said there was really powerful and really important. If that could get caught on and embraced with the criteria, instead of doing for example, instead of doing a 72-hour hold, let's do a 30-day hold on people that are exhibiting danger to themselves. 30 days, okay? 30 days, the same thing you would do with a domestic violence subject in jail. You're going to hold them you're not going to let them go. It's a no bail hold, because they might just come and kill the lady or the dude that put them into jail, right? Called the police and just for example. That's all I'm doing, is I'm just saying there's a hold, there's a process, there's a criteria that holds the domestic violent people, usually dudes, but there is batshit crazy women that do batshit crazy violent stuff to their partners. In fact, kill them. I don't know. That's another video. The point is what I'm trying to say is what she's saying is that let's expand it. Now, she didn't say my idea of let's take 72-hour hold. That's the legal 72-hour. And if you don't have a doctor or somebody in there, some psych nurse or whatever, that says, yeah, this person's batshit crazy and they're talking and mumbling about killing people, and better hold on to them longer. Yeah, it might be a good idea to hold on to them longer. If there isn't anything like that in a chart note, they're released after 72 hours. She's not saying what I just said, but I hope she's thinking what I'm thinking. Let's expand that state custody of the people, not just randomly anyone, not just MAGA patriots that you don't like because they got a big black truck and a Confederate flag off the back. We're going to put them in 6 months in state custody. We're not talking about that. Although with her, who knows? Nah, I'm kidding. I'm being serious here. We're talking about the people that we all see every day in our neighborhoods that scare the living shit out of us all. I mean, for real. I'm a pretty big guy, and I'm hella tough. I'm a tough son of a bitch, okay? I say that not to be, John Wayne or something. I'm just telling you, these people scare the shit out of me. Okay, and I have social services background. I've dealt with some of the craziest fuckers you could ever possibly see. I've dealt with them and gave them services and toothpaste and computer lab and the Bud Clark Commons there. Okay, I've done that. That's what you do in social services, right? These people I'm talking about now in my neighborhood for years here since this whole COVID thing, and they released all the whack jobs. And now we're hearing that they didn't just release them because of COVID. They released them because of the staffing issues and crisis. And so they're just spilled out onto the streets, and they're throwing rocks into windshields. I mean, we've all seen these stories in the press for quite a while. Years. And there's a reason that happened. We now know why. Because there wasn't the attorneys and the counsel and the staff and the case managers to represent them in court to say they're okay, they're feeling much better now. Shock therapy and all these medications were really, really good for Roger. We can release him back out, and he can hang out in the parks and get services there at the Blanchet House or wherever they can get those services referred, right? That's different. Or you say, no, Roger's not doing well. Roger is talking about killing his family. He's talking about all kinds of weird demons and devils that he's seen. We need to keep Roger in custody for another at least 30 days, Your Honor. I recommend maybe 6 months for Roger to kind of get rehabilitated if we got a place. Now, what does that do for Roger? Being in the state, he has his own room. He's got his little hospital. He's got his meds. He's got his little chocolate chip cookies and whatever else. He's got his, the meals are probably not the greatest, but they're going to keep him alive. Okay? Just like jail. I mean, jail food is rough, but it keeps those guys alive. They probably get slimmed down and all the weights. They get all pumped up and feeling great. But that's the point that needs to change. I think that's what I hear from her. And if I do hear that from Governor, I applaud. And I hope that it's not just cheap talk out of the speech to address the floor so you can secure some transportation package of hundreds of billions of dollars that you want the Republicans to go along with, which that's how she finishes this speech. And I don't understand the obsession with these transportation packages. I mean, the Max Line in itself is a crime train. It's one of the most unsafe places in the metro. Why are we wanting to spend billions of dollars to run the crime train over the Columbia River crossing? I have no idea. It's a federal plan. It's probably a part of smart cities. In fact, I know it's a part of smart cities. They want everybody to get on public transportation or a bicycle. Nobody needs a car. You get a mule and 40 acres. Or not quite that much. But you get a free donkey. It's like a unicorn, but different. So I don't understand that, but it's securing the federal dollars. I mean, there's got to be an actual common sense, like logic explanation. I mean, we know that's federal money. So duh, dude, you just said it. Okay, is that it? That's all it is? We're obsessed with transportation packages because we need the federal money. And if we don't have a plan, then we can't get the federal dollars. Is that what it is? Is that it? Is there anything else to it? Or is there some sort of weird World Economic Forum global masters that are saying you got to take everyone's cars and they all got to get on trains? I just find that hard to believe that that's the case, but it could be that insane. I don't know completely. Although we do know, don't we? Back to Tina.
That can more effectively serve people with serious mental health needs who can live independently.
screening.
Finally, before I move on to
vetting.
education, I want to emphasize that
Can
we
live
cannot
independently.
overlook
Who needs to
our
stay
children
hospital?
and our youth.
We need crisis counselors.
Too many of Oregon's kids are struggling with things they shouldn't have to deal with, from
True.
homelessness to acute mental health disorders
True.
to addiction.
Very
We have to help our children and youth now
true. It's true. Yes,
so they have a better, healthier path to their future.
it is. I'm a youth crisis
That means
counselor.
painting with a broad
from
brush for
years
better
back.
outcomes in every aspect
That's
of a
true.
child's life, including improved access to behavioral health care, working toward better outcomes for children in the state's care, and working to address youth homelessness.
Youth homelessness. That's exactly what I did. And when I was involved with that through Salvation Army, a greenhouse, they had it, the Janus Youth programs, New Avenues for Youth, Outside In, all of them were bare bones. Of course, I'm going back into the late 90s, right before 2000, 2001, before 9/11 hit. That's where I was doing that. Residential crisis counselor. I had a bunch of different titles. The point is that I couldn't get the Democrats' attention. I couldn't get the governor's attention. I couldn't get the Multnomah County commissioner's attention to actually get something down on paper to get this funding and process. Now, all of these different NGOs are in place. They need the funding. It needs to continue. We got to keep them out off the street because it takes months, not years, months to take a suburban child, young person, youth, teen, the streets within months has them addicted, sex worker, strung out with sores and scabs within months, doing drugs that'll kill them within months. That's the reality of the situation. That's what I experienced. It's a traumatic, shared trauma event to be in. But back then, it was bare bones. I mean, it was tragic because it was so damn sad of how little there was. It was just really getting going. Janus Youth Programs had bought a couple of buildings and things like this. So it's very, very important to keep that focus of early intervention and keep them because it happens. It's faster than anybody realizes. These folks that are running the teens out of the house because of whatever reason, they don't realize that within weeks or months that child, that young person, their child, but it's a young youth, will be dead, will be addicted within weeks, or can be addicted in weeks, more than likely addicted within weeks, or dead within months. This is the seriousness of the situation. To hear Governor Tina say that, I applaud her. I applaud her. That is remarkable enlightenment. We have made huge progressive strides. The Democrat neoliberal apparatus machine in Portland, Multnomah County, and Oregon, governor here in Oregon, has made huge progress in all of that. And it's really, really critical. And so that has to, I can't just let that, there's no criticism there at all. It needs to be the positivity and the applauding of it. And that's something that Republicans may not understand. I don't know if Minority Leader Kristen Drazen, it seems like she understands this too. She talks about a little bit about the homelessness crisis. I mean, you can't avoid it. Anywhere you go, anywhere on the West Coast, anywhere in Portland, you see it. And then you hear it. If you don't see it and you read about it and you hear it on the news, and that's the way it is, right? So let's see here. I don't want to go. We're going a little long, but let me play I'll skip ahead a little bit on this here. Hang on.
Ensuring that Oregon students have adequate access to behavioral health services in and out of school settings is critical to supporting Oregon's children and their families.
It is. It's true.
That includes specific supports for mental health and substance abuse, including targeted residential and community-based treatment capacity and suicide prevention programming.
But so who's going to handle it? The NGOs? Which NGOs?
When a young person develops an addiction,
build buildings or convert buildings?
we need residential
That's how it's
facilities
done,
that can
but
care for them
Is that her plan?
and help them manage the factors that
Does she have a plan to convert buildings? I mean, she's talking about we need treatment facilities, we need this and that, and there's so much. God, God, there's just so much things that can go wrong in these treatment facilities and abuse that happens to youth. God, just ask Paris Hilton, who was lobbying Congress on how to protect youth in treatment. She was, I think, sexually abused in a treatment facility, and she's a millionaire child. She's a child of a millionaire family, and God bless her soul. I mean, the trauma she went through, if it can happen to the rich kids, it's going to happen to all the rest of the orphans that don't have anybody advocating for them, or young poor folks that parents are just too shit shot to even stand up and defend and advocate for them.
Led them to substance use in the first place.
It's trauma.
The good thing,
trauma. Okay, I'm skipping ahead.
The future trajectory of our children and youth. And my recommended budget asks you to stay on this path with me.
So she's asking for the
existing
funds.
Reporting and the corresponding data collection to reduce administrative burden and duplication of efforts. My legislation will run in tandem with a set of administrative actions to ensure that the Oregon Department of Education holds up its end of the bargain on accountability. The bottom line
the
is
school system is
carbon emissions, and by taking.
So she's talking about the school system. What she's not saying is that the Portland teachers unions control her. That's who got her into office, and that type of
action
union
to
apparatus
enhance the resiliency of our natural resources and our communities.
In my opinion,
our most vulnerable communities are working, and
she's talking about billions and billions of dollars being spent going into the schools. And what I suggest that we do is you redirect that funding. The school systems are in shambles. They're not healthy, they're not safe, and they're not educating. It's indoctrination. And you've got DEI, you've got this gender dysphoria. The Democrats a couple years ago were fighting to, behind parents' back and informed consent, give medications and synthetic hormones and puberty blockers to the students. This was Tina's doing. This was Tina's friends and Tina's agenda in Portland. It still is for many of them. That's not helping youth. That's not helping parents. So this is a part of that smoke and that mirrors and that's not sincere. It's not genuine. And what they're doing is actually the opposite of what she's saying in this speech, helping the youth and shoveling the money into it. Number one, get the DEI and gender dysphoria out of the schools, period. Number two, I suggest sending a huge chunk of the funds to homeschooling families. If for a care provider to be there, allow that to help partial of the rent or pay all of the rent with the care provider, the parent with the youth, and allow that bonding that keeps children healthy. If there's a primary care provider, so, instead of two parents gone and you got strangers raising the kids and latchkey children where they just come and go and they're too young to be coming and going, that's how they're getting in the trouble. That's how they're getting into drugs. That's how they're dying, killing themselves and killing others. Where's the mom? Where's the dad at the house? Where's the care provider? That homeschooling is the greatest method to prevent this risky behavior that happens and sends the teens out into the streets, in my opinion. It's not going to solve it all. It's not going to solve it all. You've got bad parents no matter what. You've got good parents that are fundamentalists and they think that they're doing the God's word or whatever, and it's driving these youth out into the streets, driving them away into runaway, and they're killed that way, or psychologically destroyed or physically and psychologically through the drugs because they were driven out. You can't solve it all, but you can mitigate. And that's my proposal that they're not talking about, is that the homeschool dynamic and freeing up those funds instead of all these hundreds of billions of dollars going into the public education system that's failing. Send a portion of those funds to, like school choice, families that want to homeschool, and allow them to do those educational resources at home in those early years. That's super critical. The early education, but it's early family bonding. If you just have strangers, you're funding early education and you got strangers raising the children, that bonding is not there. That's critical, that needs to keep youth healthy as they transition into independent thinking, independent living, independent choices and decisions based on solid bonding with at least one parent. Could be the dad. Her little story about the Clapsa County father, more than likely it's going to be single moms, but the single moms are going to be forced out to go uh, get employment, and then you've got childcare expenses. So they'll subsidize the childcare expenses, which is thousands of dollars. It's often twice the price of rent, for real, but they won't allocate for homeschooling. There's no structure there in place for that. That's something that Republicans in Oregon could really step up, like Christina Drazen. I've bounced that off of her just like in social media. Hard to say if she's embraced that. I think if anybody is going to embrace it, it's going to be those conservative mothers that understand the public education system in Portland is failing everybody.
And natural lands, our wildlife, and our rivers, streams, and lakes all face an existential threat. As the relentless march of climate change tests our resolve.
What's the threat? Test our resolve. What's the existential threat? This is the boogeyman of climate change. It's hysteria and delusional. It's just as bad as schizophrenia. It's climate change schizophrenia. It's a boogeyman. It's threatening our streams and our fish and our... Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not. We have dry patterns. We have summer where it gets hot. Sometimes we get a heat dome that'll come up like we've gotten a couple years ago coming out of the desert, Death Valley of California. It's always 130 degrees in Death Valley in California. Always in the summer like that every year. Sometimes those will come up. We got atmospheric rivers for the last couple of years into California. All the reservoirs are back into Oregon. But that rain creates grass, and grass dries. Summertime, there's wildfire. There's going to be grass fires. We need to manage the forest, not create this boogeyman hysteria and this climate change hysteria nonsense that she goes into for quite a while here, this resilience where we got to spend all this money doing all this crazy shit other than just managing and raking the forest and thinning the trees, creating jobs, keep the logs in the mills here local, employ the loggers, employ the rural communities, create the tax revenue, create the state revenue. All of that comes together, but that's not what she's saying. She's saying boogeyman climate change. We got to fight it, do all this other crazy bullshit, like killing owls. They want to kill owls. I'll show you that here in a second. They want to kill the barn owl because they're trying to save a spotted owl. So they want to eliminate 400,000 owls, hire people to roam through the woods with shotguns and killing the owls. It's not a joke. Spend $1 billion on it. Bureau of Land Management needs to be eliminated. I hope Doge picks that up. This BLM proposal, they're signing on $1 billion. I'll show you the article here in a second. I want to wrap this up real quick. I just want to see her say this. She believes in God and that God bless you and that God is her source of... Governor Tina couldn't even say Merry Christmas. Not once. I think she mentioned Hanukkah. And I'm not sure if she was one that said Kwanzaa. She couldn't wish Oregonians, 4 million Oregonians celebrating Christmas. She never wished Oregon Merry Christmas. But now she wants to say she believes in God. Somebody that believes in God can wish Oregonians, as the governor, you can wish Oregonians Merry Christmas. Don't you think?
To protect that which sustains us. Last year, my administration focused on bringing in as much federal bipartisan infrastructure law
Climate change,
reserves to manage for
wildfires. She's talking about hundreds of millions of dollars fighting wildfires. And that's the thing, is that they're making more money shoveling federal dollars into fighting the wildfire than they are just doing proper federal forest management of thinning of trees and raking of dead fuels.
Of the Wildfire Funding Work Group.
Forest floor.
And hope all of us can work together to guarantee ongoing resources for community resiliency.
Resiliency. There it is again.
Letter of
right?
expectations to our state agencies about improving our business operations. In my 2 years at the helm, I've hired more than a dozen new agency directors.
Oh, brother.
Or to track the progress to improve transparency and consistency. So without a doubt, there are many things we need to focus on to realize the progress that Oregonians are demanding. We can't let up on the top 3 priorities that I started with: housing, mental health, and education. And we have to muster the stamina to find success on other issues as well. The executive branch just welcomed the Oregon Public Defense Commission to its agency ranks. Thank you, legislature. And I look forward to working with all of you.
I don't know what the inside joke is there.
I look forward to working with you.
She's talking
to
about
translate
public defenders.
What you've learned into a legacy package to serve. I tend to think that a prerequisite for public service is a fundamental belief that the future will be better. A confidence in a brighter tomorrow, the potential for progress. Basically, hope for the future.
Hope for the future. Optimism.
I know my sense of hope comes from my personal faith in God, as it does for many of you.
Wait, what? Her hope comes from her personal faith in God? What God? Is it a pagan God? Is it the Kwanzaa God? Because it wasn't Merry Christmas God. It wasn't the Christian God. I'm okay. So let's say she's Jewish, or I think maybe her wife is Jewish. Okay, because I think I read somewhere in a tweet or a post about Hanukkah, or like a happy Hanukkah. Well, you can't wish Christians. I mean, Judeo-Christian, she doesn't identify. She doesn't see the bridge between Judeo and Christianity and wishing Christians Merry Christmas as you wish the Judaist Happy Hanukkah. Doesn't that seem odd? It just brings this. The speech was so genuine and punch, except for the climate change, and that didn't resonate with me. But maybe some of you thought it was good. But this, to talk about God, she goes on that. So she makes that statement, and then she goes into her real God is sports. And sports is how she got through it. Not with God, but with sports.
But my sense of hope was also reinforced practically from my experience playing sports when I was younger.
Sports.
I ran track in high school, among other things. And one of my events was the 400-meter relay, where 4 athletes would run really fast to rise above the maze of politics. It's false starts, circles, and dead ends, and see the path forward with one voice, speaking one unifying idea into existence. Improve the everyday lives of Oregonians in every part of the state.
There's not one unifying idea.
To move forward together, we must forge a shared path, one guided by focus, resilience, and the courage to take risks. We are all responsible for being part of the solution.
We are all resilient.
As I crossed the halfway mark of my first term and I asked myself what it will take to see through the commitments I made to Oregonians, I keep coming back to the knowledge that we can harness our resilience and our partnerships to solve problems.
Unification, resilient.
My work comes from a place of deep optimism that an answer actually exists for every problem.
Okay.
And if we just ask the right questions, listen and adapt, we can also solve every problem.
Okay.
In my office, we often remind ourselves that hope is not a strategy. But hope is necessary to stay the course and not give up.
Hopey changey though, doesn't it? All this.
My focus continues to be
you can tell
doing the most I can to chip away at our challenges and help make Oregon a place where everyone can be successful.
Everyone can be successful. I like it.
And I hope
What do you got?
and ask that you will walk with me on this journey.
Walk with
Today, tomorrow, over the next 2 years, and past that. I will always fight for the Oregon that I know is possible. An Oregon where no one has to live in a tent on a sidewalk.
That's right.
And
That's right. See, that's a huge leap of faith for her. And I know, you can see that in her eyes. I know that she did an about face on that. She used to criticize Laurelhurst Neighborhood Association because there was tents on the sidewalk. She made scathing, ridiculing, mocking letters and commentary about not in my backyard, because rape tents at Laurelhurst Park should be there. If they can be at the low-income neighborhoods of Portland, they're going to be in the high-income neighborhoods and the historical neighborhoods of Laurelhurst Park. You guys are going to get tents, and there's going to be rapes in there, and you're going to love it, because that's the way Portland equity is all about. That's the old Tina. That's what she used to say. That was her old perspectives. What she just said now was a complete about face. She's now saying none of those tents are acceptable. None of these rape tents and homeless camps, fentanyl chasing of the dragon, is okay anywhere in Portland ever. That is a total about face, and I applaud her if she's sincere. If it's not just the staff writers, the authors, the speech writers, if it's sincere and true, I applaud you, Governor. I applaud you for making that stride, because I remember the old Tina. I went against the old Tina. I did hostile tweets with the old Tina. This not in my backyard NIMBY you did when I was in the dealing with the community, and you were in a white ivory that was gross and disgusting for years. Tina, years. You and your friends and representatives of Portland made a complete about face if they're all on board with that now. And that should be
Oregon, where Oregonians seeking health or substance use issues can find and afford the support that they need. And Oregon, where every child has a safe place to receive a high quality public education. And Oregon, where everyone has financial stability and pathways to greater opportunity. And in Oregon, where we safeguard our values and take care of each other, regardless of the federal landscape.
We're taking care of each other now, Tina?
I am so incredibly thankful for everyone in this room.
Camps with vaccine passports?
And every Oregonian who has and continues to contribute to this shared vision for our state.
Shared vision.
I want to thank you for listening today. God bless you, and God bless Oregon. Thank you.
God bless you, and God bless Oregon. I mean, that to me is just profoundly, amazingly, how do I even say that? How do I even say it? God bless you from Tina? She was unable to wish Oregonians, 4 million plus Oregonians celebrating Christmas. She was unable to tweet, post, X, wish any Christian type of connection to Merry Christmas. No Merry Christmas from Tina. Just weeks ago. But now she said that God is directing her, or something like that. She didn't quite say that. She said something about God. You heard her. And now she's saying, God bless you. Well, what God bless you? Which God is Tina blessing us with? Who's Tina with? What God is Tina with? Now, again, it could be, I think that it is the Judeo God of where? The Torah, the Quran? I mean, I don't know. All these Democrats come, Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley, they all come out wishing everyone Muslim holidays and all this and that. But Tina couldn't wish Oregonians Merry Christmas, but now she's found Jesus within those few short days between the Christmas holiday and the State of the Union address. She didn't even say Jesus. She's found God, or she always had God, but she was keeping it secret, kind of private. Like she wasn't going to let anybody know in Portland that she believed in God. No way, because she never said that before. And it's easy to say, God bless you, God bless Oregon. It's kind of a political thing to say, but is it? Why would we say that casually? I don't. I don't say that lightly. Why would she? Why would anybody? To score political points, of course. So let's see. What else did I have in store here for you? Let's see here. Okay, I got to show this. This one is just absolutely batshit crazy. Well, let's see this one here. Okay, is that coming through? Okay, so this is BLM endorses plan to kill barred owls on federal land as Oregon lawmakers push back. Which Oregon lawmakers do you think's pushing back on that? You think it's the Democrats? Do you think it's the climate change hysteria, the resilience crowd that Tina just lectured for 35 minutes? Do you think that's who's pushing back against massacring owls in the Oregon woods? No, it's not. It's the Republicans. It's the Oregon GOP. It's the people that think that that's batshit crazy action to take, and even crazier, to align with the Biden administration and BLM, who said that was a good idea. Okay, so let me go through and scroll through this. I won't go on and on long-winded because I'm way over. It's an hour and 20 minutes but I had to break it down, and I did too much talking. So, but we want to go. Okay, it's all the way down at the end. No, we don't. Sorry, OPP. I don't want you sending me anything. I think you guys are horrible. Barred owls from the east have moved in and taken over spotted owl habitat in the western forests of Oregon and are now pushing spotted owls closer and closer to extinction. Oh my God. Are you kidding? This is absolute hysteria. So we got to go out and kill 400,000 little owls because we're freaking and tripping balls out about a spotted owl that's closer and closer to extinction. It's like this little Nerf football that keeps getting tossed around. The spotted owl. They do the same thing with migrants. Democrats just play political football, and they're doing it now here with this spotted owl, which I find disgusting. And this is a big heads up to the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. But here it is right here. The Biden administration appears to be doubling down on a plan to kill barred owls in order to protect the northern spotted owl population's northwest forest. But a group of bipartisan Oregon legislators, okay, my bad. I back up. When I'm wrong, I'm wrong. They're saying bipartisan, and there is a couple of rational Democrats that are saying, hold up here, this is batshit crazy proposal. Okay? But in large part, this has been a tool. The owl has been used by a tool for the Democrats, and the Republicans have to push back. But this says here, they're calling on they're calling on the incoming Trump administration. So now here we have a Maha, America First type of weird unspoken coalition that's now addressing the incoming Trump administration together to propose the Department of Government Efficiency to reverse the decision. 2 years ago, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service announced a plan to shoot and kill an estimated 400,000 invasive barred owls. It's a fucking owl. What the fuck? Sorry. Which some advocates say could cost roughly $1.335 billion. With a B. Billion. We're talking about over the next 3 decades. So they're saying 30 years, $1 billion to go out into the forest, wandering around, massacring owls. Massacring owls, just shooting feathers, blood, carnage. It's like a duck hunt, but it's the owls. The owls are not ducks. You're not eating the ducks, okay? I understand some people like pheasants and stuff. I've actually been out hunting. I've done a lot more hunting than I like to even talk about, but haven't recently. And I sure in the fuck don't approve of killing the owls. I'm a big owl guy. I like owls, okay? I'm friends with the owls. If you can deal with that, then deal with it. Barred owls, which are bigger and more aggressive than spotted owls, can outcompete the smaller native birds for prey and nesting spots. They're one of the biggest threats to efforts to help spotted owl population recover alongside forest habitat loss. Fewer than 2,000 spotted owl pairs survive in Oregon. Jesus fuck. Despite logging restrictions and decades of efforts to protect the species. So everything that they've done for decades and decades to support this, now we know it was all bullshit because it didn't help. Protecting the log, it didn't help anything. It was all a bunch of crap. They used the owl, the spotted owl, like a leverage, just like they used the Delta smelt down in California, just like they used the sage grouse out in eastern Oregon to get everyone whipped up into thinking that they're on a mass extinction level event. And this is why we got to just keep the sagebrush instead of fire mitigation, thinning of the forest, raking of the floor. Northern spotted owls are at a tipping point, and both barred owls and habitat have to be managed to save them. Barry Bushaw, BLM Oregon Washington State Director, said in an email statement, quote, "If we act now, future generations will still be able to see and hear northern spotted owls in our Pacific Northwest forest." End quote. Let me tell you something. I have backpacked. I'm 50 plus years old. I have backpacked every single wilderness from here into the Montana Rocky Mountain, Sawtooth Mountains, Glacier Mountains. I've done it all. Not once have I ever seen a spotted owl in the wild or ever heard a spotted owl in the wild. I've heard owls. I've encountered owls. I've encountered lots of birds of prey. Never a spotted owl, ever. Okay? And this person here is saying future generations are just going to see them all over, like they're just whipping around, right here in urban, like the Hawks do in Portland. We're just going to have spotted owls whipping around Savi's Island. They're going to be everywhere. You're going to have so many damn owls. It's going to be like seagulls, and you're going to wish you took the spotted owls back out. No, it's bullshit. This simply isn't a sound strategy. Okay, here's Oregon State Rep. David Gomberg, Democrat for Otis. Otis is a small little, tiny little town on the way to the Oregon coast. But we applaud you, Democrat from Otis, David Gomberg. I don't think I've met him. He says, quote unquote, "This simply is not a sound strategy fiscally or ecologically. Thank you, sir. Thank you." Quote, "As a staunch animal welfare advocate and a believer in evidence-based policy, I cannot support a plan that calls on taxpayers to front $45 million a year to cull a protected species. We certainly need to better address the decline we've seen in our spotted owl population. I don't agree with that." This is Gomberg. "But this is not the way to do it," end quote. I do agree with that part, Mr. Gomberg, Rep. Gomberg. I'm going to come down and shake that guy's hand. I'm going to come down and meet him in Salem. Gomberg joined 4 Republican Oregon lawmakers on Wednesday. Okay, so it's one guy. The bipartisan turns out it's just Gomberg all by himself. He's out in Otis, surrounded by loggers. Okay, I didn't know there was Democrats surrounded by loggers in Oregon. No, there is. Look at Lane County. I'm joking. To issue a bipartisan call to the next president. Okay, so he joined the 4 Republican Oregon lawmakers. It doesn't list their names. I got to look that up, huh? Or there's Ed Deal. All right, Ed Deal. I follow him on X. He's vocal and looking to step into leadership position. I don't know. Could be good. We're going to need some leadership here pretty soon. They've taken everybody out with the legislation that said if you boycotted and walked out, then you can't run for election. That's how they got rid of they just wiped out like a tsunami Oregon Republican leadership. A lot of people don't know that. And it's not talked about. And it's not something that isn't repeated, which I need to start repeating it. Because that law wiped them out. They were standing up for Oregonians against this DEI, ball snipping, crazy, batshit crazy shit the Democrats were pushing down our throats a couple years ago. And they did a boycott. All they had left was a walkout. They walked out, and then they passed that legislation. I think it was a referendum. We the people said, if you walk out, you're gone. Goodbye. You can't ever run again. Get the fuck out of here. So the Democrats, who had a little narrow majority controlling all the policies in Oregon, especially Portland, definitely Portland, they controlled that narrative. And that's how the tsunami washed out the Republican leaders. A lot of good people, a lot of beautiful Republican leaders. I remember, God, I'm forgetting their names, so I shouldn't even have said anything, but there was a couple of, I think I even went to school with one of them. And I'm getting old where I think everyone looks familiar, and I think I know everybody or knew them somewhere 30 years ago. It's crazy. But okay, quote unquote, killing one type of an owl to save another is outrageous and doomed to fail. Republican State Rep Ed Deal of Scio, I think it's Scio, SCIO, said in an email statement, this plan will swallow up Americans' hard-earned tax dollars for no good reason, end quote. Thank you, Ed Deal. Thank you. The Bureau of Land Management said the plan it's adopting was the result of significant public input and through environmental analysis by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Well, there's the best reason we got to gut the Bureau of Land Management. Bye-bye. Whatever we can do needs to be done because we got to reclaim our lands here in Oregon. And we got to get the hell out of this Bureau of Land Management stranglehold and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I think we could they used to be different when I was a kid, when I was younger. Even when I did AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps was a great, strange experience, but it was a great experience because we got to work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Even those guys were conservative out there in the woods. They weren't Democrats. They weren't advocating for this crazy shit. So there's that one. I hope that worked and you could see as I walked through that. I'm still getting used to this sharing because I see up here it says stop sharing. Then there's another one where I got to click on it. It says view tab in it, which that's different dashboard than what I'm used to seeing. So I'm going to click on share this tab instead, and then you've got this. So that puts me in it in the corner. All right, so this. I think I included this in the show notes. It's just this is the budget. That's her budget. So I don't need to go through it. It's the shorthand that I reviewed. This one here, the Los Angeles Times. You dirty dogs. This one came out November 2024. This was just a couple months ago. An atmospheric river dumping rain across Northern California and several feet of snow in the Sierras was making its way across the state Friday, bringing flooding and threatening mudslides. We've gone from a drought years ago for I think almost 5 or 6, 7 years they were claiming, and it was dry. They were not getting these atmospheric rivers to now all the reservoirs are full. The last couple of years, record rainfall, record atmospheric rivers, record flooding. It's completely reversed. And that is the nature of the climate. That's the nature of weather change. Now, climate change is long-term weather pattern changes. None of that is happening. You fight climate change. Fight. No, you're not fighting climate change, okay? You don't fight climate change. You can't fight the weather. Like I said in the beginning, unless you are the Hopi and you want to do a rain dance where we got to kill some snakes. And I'm cool with that. I'm not a snake guy. You can't change the weather. Well, you can with geoengineering, but naturally, you can't change the weather naturally. Unless you're the Hopi. And they did. It rained when they did their little dance. The point is there, though, I hope you catch that, is that climate change is long-term weather pattern changes. That's not what we're witnessing. That's deserts going into grasslands. That's grasslands becoming deserts. That's not happening in Oregon. It's not happening in California. The deserts in California that have been that way for hundreds of years are still deserts. And the areas that are not deserts, they're still forests. They're still whatever they are in the different, because California, it's a mixed bag. Northern California is really different than Southern California. It's really two states. We know that. It's obvious. I know I'm stating the obvious, but so that little article there, I just simply wanted to point out that it's atmospheric rivers. It's all over now for the droughts. Okay. And so then what's this one here? This one was okay. Oregon lawmakers gear up for first legislative session. I click on session at the Capitol Thursday. And you've got who's this quoted? We have people who are living outside. We have people who can't afford the homes. We have people who need mental health and addiction treatment and have to do a better job for our kids, she said. So I'm going to keep bringing it back to why we're here and try to keep the Metro doesn't get any appreciation. Metro, that's Clackamas, Multnomah, and it's funny because the counties want, but that's the big government that actually is working to build housing. They don't want to admit it. Some of them may even want to debate me. Gladly take you on that debate, and I do it in threads publicly on X. The governor and her party are focused on aggressively increasing the housing supply for everyone and providing more affordable home ownership options. Okay, alongside funding for House Minority Leader Christine Drazan, which I actually kind of like her. We've got to stop enabling this idea that it's okay for someone to live outside, echoed House Minority Leader. That's exactly what we just heard Tina say. We should reverse our law that allows people to camp in public spaces, and instead, we should help people get into shelter, end quote. From Rep. Drazan, who should actually be Governor Drazan. I volunteered on her campaign, even though nobody wants to own me on that. But here, let's see here. Uh-oh. It's cutting out. I think it might be overloading. Am I still here? It says I'm here, but it's really slow and it's acting kind of retarded, spinning around and around and around. It says this one here, Tina Kotek's wife says she's in recovery from alcoholism, lives with mental illness. So this is March 27th, 2024. So this came out, which I actually supported. Why did I support that? I mean, right? Because she ran out the Pfizer Pharma OHSU John Hopkins shills that controlled Governor Brown and were controlling Tina. Probably still are, but the fact that those shills were driven out of her administration, we should salute that. We should salute that, whether you want to say she's batshit or she's on a give a fuck. I really don't. She drove out the lobbyists and the Pfizer, the pharmaceutical, the shills. She drove them out of the administration, whether it was intentional or not. Maybe they got all freaked out. It may have just been dealing with, her borderline personality disorder, which she probably, I'm just guessing. I have no idea, but it's a lot more common. That's why I say it all the time, because it's very, very common for people to have weird personality disorders, like gender dysphoria. That's a borderline personality disorder. If you don't know what you're, this or that, or, up or down, or that's dysphoria, all right. That's called personality disorder. But I digress. I'm not a doctor. I'm just, spraying my thoughts. But it was Lars Larson, for example, was just pounced on it like he was just like a bobcat coming in to pounce and shredder. And I mean, he's a recovering self-identified recovering alcoholic himself, right? I mean, he talks about having scotch in the newsroom desk drawer. I mean, we can't just be shredding people because they're battling things. We should be applauding them for getting sober and standing up and turning it around. Turn the train wreck around. Nobody can turn a train wreck around, well, except for yourself. That's the addict and the alcoholism. That's the mantra. They're the only person that can do it for themselves. It's ourselves. So, but even politically, if you just heard my ramble there, it actually made sense to let her set up this little office and let her throw some wild parties and gotcha. You could have got her. But because you guys overreacted like a bunch of jackass ableists, smashing her for mental illness and smashing her for addiction disorders, depressive mood disorders, I'm sure to go boot with it, you shut it all down, and now you guys isolated. They're in silos, and you got nothing. You got nothing. See? You got to think smarter, Republicans. You got to think a little bit further down the line, and you got to come together on some teamwork of some kind. It's possible, but man, Oregon Republican and conservatives and independents in general just in shambles. Shambles. The only people that are organized are the people that are fucking us up. The Democrats, the neoliberals, got a stranglehold on us, on the state, on the Multnomah County, on the city of Portland. We got to come together or we're done. And we've got an opportunity. I like the optimism that Governor Tina said. I thought the speech was pretty well rounded. It's just some of those weird, quirky things. When I hear someone say God and they're unable to wish people Merry Christmas on X, it does. But that's an unfortunate situation because it is to me. I mean, they probably don't even care. But as an independent, it's like as soon as I think I could maybe, buy into, not really support her, because I can't really support Tina, but I can support the common cause. That's what I want to say. The common cause is houselessness, teen addiction, the lack of facilities, the lack of this, the lack of that. It's a very, very slow come around, but we can do it. The main thing in closing is, and I repeat this and I post it so many times, but nobody hears me. I'm just too small of a voice. We need low income housing, not affordable housing. The affordable housing is gangbusters. Metro's doing a bang up job on what they call affordable. It's not affordable to the people that need it the most. And that's the 7,000 plus living in tents, blue tarp cities, chasing the dragon, doing the fentanyl yoga, and selling their bodies for another hit of dope. That must stop. And we can come together to fight, not for climate change, for human change. Fight our humanitarian crisis. God bless. Peace out. Your stream will stop immediately.